Lots of time on the M25. I hate the M25.
That seems like a recurring theme when you speak to people from England.
Anyone in the southeast, and actually anyone that has to go anywhere near the southeast, the M25, which for anyone who doesn't know, if anyone listening in the States or Europe who's never heard of the M25, it's 125-mile motorway, highway, mostly 4 lanes. Because
it's essentially it's a ring road
all the way around London.
Right the way around London, yeah.
And if you can average more than 30 miles an hour on it, you're doing well.
It's known as the car park of the southeast.
Yeah. And of course, because there's so much traffic on it. I mean, yesterday we were about 100 meters behind a fairly new white Range Rover when one of its tires exploded.
Oh wow,
that's exciting! Don't know what happened. Don't know what it hit. It was like, luckily it was 1 lane over, but all the debris went. It was on the driver's side, so all the debris went to the right, straight in front of us. My wife was going, "Watch out!" And it's just like it's great. Puffs of smoke, puffs of dirt blown up off the road because of the obviously exploding tire. Yeah, it shredded the side of the Range Rover. He pulled over. He got over to the side. He got over to the side without too many issues. He must have been in just that sweet spot of traffic where he could go from second lane onto the hard shoulder without the lorry behind had to brake a bit. Behind him had to brake a bit. That was scary, and there was lots of bits. Luckily, I play my general principle on the M25 is not go as fast as possible as some people like to play. It's get as much space between me and any other vehicle as possible.
Yeah, I play a different game on the M25 when I've hit it.
Try and survive.
The hard thing is to keeping a nice distance to the car in front of you, but not big enough that someone else takes it, because then you have no space.
Oh, that happens all the time. Yeah, that happens all the time.
So exactly 1 car length is.
That is definitely a trick to driving through Paris as well.
Yeah, I think exactly 1 car length is not quite tight enough to not get someone in there.
It's a paradox, though. I live by one of the more congested roads in Norway, but also the straightest line and the best road you can get. But there's always an accident. And of course, there is a divider there between the directions, and you have 3 lanes in every direction. But you even get a queue on the other side because people slow down because they want to watch. And I'm sitting there, somebody just had a fender bumper, just get over it. I want to go home, but no, everything is grinding down to a halt because everybody wants to watch.
Yeah.
I think it's in Germany. They may have a policy now. The police, obviously, once they've ensured immediate safety and whatever, the police will actually record with cameras anyone rubbernecking, and they get fined. So anyone slowing down, and obviously slowing the traffic down, potentially faces a bit of a fine, which I think is. I remember I saw a video a while ago. I can't remember if it was Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube where it was. And this German officer, it was translations, basically stopped some of these people who were rubbernecking and then sort of dragged them over to the accident to sort of have a look at the body. And just like, can I have a look? Can I have a closer look? And they're like, no.
I mean, it's just human nature, isn't it? It's like, there's something there. What is it? Is it danger? Is it something I need to pay attention to? I suppose I suppose you need to keep an eye on what you're actually doing, though, don't you?
Yeah, I usually call to my wife, look at what's happened and tell me later, because I try to focus on driving. But it's kind of sad when you're alone in the car. I'll never know what happened there. But yeah,
my dad is an advanced motorist, and as part of that training, it was on motorcycles, and the instructor would be sort of right at the back with the headset on, and normally go out in pairs, and they couldn't speak back to him, but he could just shout crap at them. And he was, my dad was saying, they sort of riding along through northern Wales, and he kept trying to distract them. He's trying to keep them focused, but talking about the importance of maintaining the visual cues of what's going on, making sure that you're staying focused on what you're doing, your road position, everything else. And while explaining all this to them, he'd then be going, "Oh, look at the tits on that," or "Oh, look at this or that," trying to get them to just twitch or to just look at, this is, sort of
I had a driving instructor like that. Yeah.
So
I saw this clip of a rally driver going off the road in a spectacular way, and when they slowed down the clip and watched at it in replay, you could see him passing a spectator just showing her tits, and then like half a second later, he just went off the road. And if that was the reason or not, nobody knows. But like the coincidence was blissful.
We're our own worst enemies, I think.
Definitely.
We died happy. Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah. I mean, these are how accidents happen. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. Or one way that accidents happen.
Tits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that why you have the saying "tits up"?
Oh, no, that's an interesting one. Where's that phrase come from?
That's a good question, actually. I think it's
if you're on your back, you're dead type thing.
Yeah,
Probably,
probably that.
I've heard belly up, so it's probably a derivative of that, maybe. But yeah.
It amazes me with you guys that you know these sayings. I worry about sometimes when I'm talking to you and you're not going to understand what the hell I'm going on about. And then we were chatting the other day, and Haavard comes out with the term "loosey goosey" and things like that. I was like, I'm just not going to worry about this anymore.
I mean, we're force-fed the BBC from a young age, so.
I've had a similar chat with Raz before about kind of the forgetting that he's Norwegian, because the English is comprehension's better than half of my English mates, and it was he was saying it's exactly that. We forget that the rest of us are subjected to American TV, but you guys just kind of force-fed British TV instead.
Yeah, well, both of it, but I mean that depends on what you liked. When you realize that there's a difference. Oh, those programs where they talk English, they're actually from different countries, from different continents. That some are from England, some are from Australia, some are from USA, and you realize what the difference is. Oh, these people sound really angry all the time. Oh, that's England. Okay.
That's Scotland.
Okay,
That's
these people are angry and they shoot at each other. Oh, that's USA. These people seems rather nice all the time and drinks a lot of beer. Oh, that's Australia.
So the English always sound angry.
Well, that depends on what kind of programs you watch. But I mean, always had a soft spot for the angry English comedy. I mean, the Monty Python, Fawlty Towers, Bottom, The Young Ones.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people.
It's a good selection.
Being mean to each other.
Yeah.
I fell in love with Pink Floyd at a very early age, and I remember the phrase "quiet desperation is the English way," and I really liked the phrase, but I did not have the cultural reference to really understand it. But as I grew older and learned more, it started to sink in that, I think I get it now. And as KJ, I also was bottle fed on Monty Python, and some of the greater Norwegian comedians of that time was also inspired by Monty Python. So that's maybe the baseline for my train of thoughts.
We can only apologize
so much.
Just let's leave it at that.
I wonder sometimes with Monty Python, it's I mean, I grew up on Monty Python, and one of my maths teachers at school had been at university with Terry Jones. So it was, and yeah, but my teachers were the same kind of ilk as well, and yeah, the humor and the sarcasm. Yeah, it was just completely pervaded every sort of part of life, really. But I wonder, they will get to a stage where Monty Python becomes such a niche nerd thing that humor won't necessarily spread through as much, I think. And the 80s humor of the young ones and that, again, it won't spread as far. And I don't think kind of the humor from the last sort of 25 years, 30 years, maybe fits in quite the same way.
Well,
No,
while DVD was still a thing, I bought the complete Monty Python box set, and then I saw a lot of things I didn't remember seeing on television, and then you have the movies in parallel, and some of them hold up really well today. But a lot of the comedy is also very coupled with the time they were made.
Yes.
So the newer generation, which don't have that same reference, will not find it funny.
And some of it now isn't. Some of it now isn't funny.
No.
I mean, we have to talk about that point as well. It was
and that was
culturally
also a
acceptable in the
realization.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I saw the complete box set and I saw all their sketches, there are some parts there that are really not funny. But then again, you can't, at their peak level, you can't have that level for so many years. You have to have a variation in quality. You can't get around that. But
Yeah,
absolutely.
Things there are so much things I guess were current as well at the time, and I mean those things probably went over my head when I watched this when I was young. But things
totally.
like this, I mean, you more or less have to look at the greatest hits, and those will be golden probably forever of things like this.
Yeah, definitely.
So a bit of discussion happening in the chat about the origins of stuff. Alan has Googled it for us and suggests that it's possibly a 20th century phrase of military origin, probably from World War II, suggesting the term derives from the behavior of airplane altitude indicators, which turn upside down because they're and then they're a W shape. That when faulty, display an inverted W, which resembles a pair of breasts.
That was the bit that was the one that was staring around in my head.
And we've got Tom has suggested that possibly it's from Chaucer, who's an Old English writer back from the kind of 14th century, I want to say, referring to an acrobat landed in an inopportune manner. But then
I wonder the validity of that one.
Yeah, he's also said, one of us is lying and you'll never know.
I think both those two are kind of related.
So I know that Balls Out was one that was people often misattribute, but it was down to the governor on an engine that the balls out basically meant that you were like flooring the engine. It's nothing to do with human anatomy.
A missed cod piece.
You'll have to explain for the audience then, Jamie, what balls deep means.
Yeah, that one I'll leave to everyone's imagination.
That's when the engine's gone too fast and the governor's broken and flung them off.
Sounds reasonable.
Oh, yeah. It must. I mean, you say you guys have you've kind of been exposed to kind of English TV for a long time, and therefore they kind of sort of get brought up with some of the idioms. But I mean, I know plenty of British people who struggle with some idioms. So I mean, to actually then pick them up in a second language, hats off to you. Yeah, I mean, some of them must there must be some make you kind of go, what on earth are they talking about? I mean, I feel the same sometimes, but
Yeah, well, you learn to read between the lines. But I thought about this, talking about a second language for a lot of countries around the world. Well, especially countries on the size of Norway and Sweden, English isn't as much a second language as it's almost it's closer than that, because you're
Joint
so
first, isn't it, almost?
It's a
Yeah.
parallel language almost.
yeah, almost like that, because you're so exposed to it. And when people come from all around the world here, we usually just switch to English, because that's what everyone knows, no matter where they come from. So, I mean, for you, a second language is actually just a second. It's not really the same, because you can't be exposed to it the same way that
Yeah.
we are.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
and,
No,
ge- and
it's-
generally the British aren't really known for wanting to learn second languages. That's
Why
not to
should
say
we
there
learn-
aren't some.
Why,
There's
why
that.
should
Yeah,
we learn a
exactly.
second language when we can just
Yeah.
invade the country and force them to learn English? Surely that's the more sensible.
And there's so many people who kind of have that principle. My wife is a linguist, and she teaches predominantly German. German's her prime subject. Her degree was in German. She also teaches French. She also speaks conversational Swedish. She can get by in and understand sort of Dutch, Norwegian, Danish. Yeah, she'll often watch
Oh my goodness.
Scandinavian TV, often with the subtitles on, just in order to kind of help enhance. Yeah, she picks up languages. I mean, I studied Welsh for 2 years in school, mostly to get out games. It was at a time when it wasn't compulsory to study Welsh, and she's better at it than I am. And that's only from going on holiday in Wales. She has that natural ability to pick up languages.
Some people have that, and of course,
Yeah.
as you're learning more languages and you see the similarities, then you
Yeah.
pick up more easily on others.
Yeah.
But it is fun to see when you know a second language, you pick up more easily on the subtleties and the things between the lines. But then on the other hand, you have like funny instances, like I was talking here to Glenn and CJ the other night, and then Glenn left the chat, and I still kept speaking in English with AJ, although we perfectly understand each other talking Norwegian and Swedish.
Yeah, we actually had to force ourselves to speak our native tongue. And I do the same whenever I chat with Rasmus. I have to remember that, I can write in Swedish to him, because we have, I mean, we have talked in real life, and that was the same at Maker Central. We walked back from the show to the hotel, and that was, we should speak our native tongue. There's no Englishmen around. That's you have to force yourself to do it.
There's a few times where, because I sometimes have like a bit of a struggle with language processing, and there's a handful of times where I've been in the midst of doing something else and not quite paying attention to anyone around me, and then someone starts speaking a foreign language, and I have this complete brain fart moment where I wonder if I've completely forgotten how to understand English. And then someone else speaks in English. Oh, no. Right, okay, hang on. Where am I? What am I doing? But it's like a genuine sort of, what's gone on? What's broken? Do I need help?
Am I having a seizure?
Yeah.
It's a good thing to check, but yeah.
I had the same thing. I was in a conversation with a few people around the table, and then someone in my peripheral just started talking to another person, and I did not pay attention to what they were talking about. But when I was finished in the conversation I was a part of, then I switched over to try to join their conversation, because they were obviously talking Norwegian. But after a few seconds, I started to they are talking Norwegian, but I can't understand what they are saying. And then it slowly dawned on me. They were Icelandic. So a lot of the melodies in the language and of course
yeah.
some of the words and the build-up are very similar. But when I started to listening in, it's like, I don't understand this. So it was weird. They are so similar, but also so different in some ways.
I
Yeah,
suppose
yeah.
that's similar to kind of British English and American English. That kind of the points where the languages diverge.
Yeah, if you compare Nottinghamshire and the Appalachians, maybe. I think some parts are more diverse than others.
Yeah, and we have some Icelandic people working at my office, and listening to them talk amongst themselves. I mean, that's just listening to Elvish, more or less. It sounds really nice. It's really soothing, but I have no clue what they are saying.
It's very. I heard a podcast. It must be a good couple of years ago now, talking about Icelandic and how it's protected as a language, and that essentially they have committees or committee that
That'll be the
spend
illusion
time kind of with and they have to look at kind of modern things, computer, internet, those sort of modern ideas that never didn't exist 1,000 years ago, and have to come up with words. But essentially, the language, if you ignore sort of the modern words, computer, internet, automobile, whatever, if you were just talking about sort of basic food, basic ideas, basic animals, weather, it would still be equally understood by somebody from 1,000 years ago. Whereas, modern English and old medieval English, never mind old English, would be almost incomprehensible.
Yeah, definitely. Do a lot of the Scandinavian languages have a similar sound to them? Are there similarities?
Some of them,
Okay.
I would say. I mean, there are some common threads, definitely between Swedish and Norwegian, and between Norwegian and Danish, and Swedish.
And then Finland
the
happens.
Swedish part of Finland. That's basically the same thing, and the Finnish part of Finland, that's completely different. They come
We've
from
had a similar
other way.
discussion before of kind of with England and the Netherlands and Germany kind of being the similarities in the languages as they've sort of come across bits of Germanic coming across into English. There's kind of
as we were invaded by the Norse.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously there's a fair bit of language transfer between all of those countries anyway, and actually French happened, but the similarities were like a vowel sound might just kind of transition across through from English through to Dutch and then into Deutsch, but it doesn't seem to be the case with, like you say, kind of Norway and Sweden being similar and a bit of an influence across to Finland. You'd expect there to be a slight Russian influence from the other side, but Finnish just seems to be this bizarre thing on its own. It's like a completely alien language. I think there's some similarities, I think, between Finnish and then like Hungarian or something.
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember it.
Completely remote.
I do not know why, but I feel that the Finnish, it's a mindset that they have, which also on many levels, also which the Icelandic have. They are very protective of their language and culture. In Norway as well, we have like a language council, so every time a new word pops up, we get a Norwegian one for it, but it's up to you if you want to use that word or if you can use the English counterpart in your sentence. But in Iceland, they're very strict on that you should use the Icelandic word, and I really like that approach. And what is special with Norway is maybe all the dialects, especially on the west coast, because you don't have to go many years back before there weren't any roads. Then you could have small fjords, couple of kilometers away from each other, but they have never spoken to each other for hundreds of years because they had to go out a long, narrow fjord and then cross maybe a dangerous area at sea to get into the other fjord. Or if you were going over the mountains, it would take you several days. So you did not have that interaction that kind of equalized out the different dialects. So I feel sorry for some of the immigrants coming to Norway, and they take the courses and everything, and then they move to a smaller city up on the coast, and it's like moving to a different world. You can't understand what people are saying.
We have similar in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who go to, if you go and visit, Liverpool or Newcastle or Scotland, it can be completely incomprehensible to anyone that's kind of not been brought up there.
Yeah.
And I'm not actually being flippant. Yeah,
I used exactly those three examples the other day as well.
Especially after a couple of pints.
Yeah.
Oh, another example. When I was at university, one of the guys in my department, studied physics with me. We were also in the climbing club together. And just after we finished, before we kind of officially graduated, but exams were done, we took a climbing trip up to North Wales, and we stayed on his parents' farm. It was near Colwyn Bay, right up in North Wales, and we were climbing in sort of Snowdonia and around that area. Some really nice climbing. Parents were first language Welsh, as was Arwell, who was my climbing partner, and his parents' accent was so strong that even when they spoke English, it just sounded like they were still speaking Welsh. Yeah. It was so difficult to kind of understand them. And I was from South Wales, but it may as well it can be a completely different nation, separated by 130 miles, and just incomprehensible, as to anyone that wasn't actually local and spoke Welsh. And probably similar to what we have, Welsh is predominantly, or certainly back in the sort of 80s, 90s, was predominantly spoken in the very top of Wales, North Wales, and the very west of Wales in the south. There's pretty much no one else. There's no one in between. There's hardly anyone in the middle. It's very, very sparse.
Anywhere we haven't got to.
Yeah, there's more sheep than people in the middle of Wales. I think it's more sheep than people in Wales, full stop. But particularly in the middle. The majority of the population of Wales is in the very south, down in the valleys, north sort of Cardiff, and more Welsh is spoken there now, just because the government, the Welsh government, back in the 90s, basically made it compulsory that all primary-aged school children were taught Welsh. So all primary schools had to teach bilingually. Don't know how that worked. It was after I'd left school, so I don't know how that worked in terms of finding enough teachers. But it did help to revive the language, which is a good thing. But the accent particularly, and the sort of the dialects going from sort of South Wales to North Wales, for people who kind of learnt Welsh in the south, would struggle if they went to the north to kind of understand. Not completely not be able to understand, but it is harder. Regional variation in dialects and accents, quite a big thing.
There might have been kind of proper old English as well. That kind of as invasions have happened over the years, with Celts coming in, that's pushed out, and over the years more and more have pushed west and north. So it's probably closer to like really old English as well than specifically just Welsh.
How is it historically? How well has England treated their close neighbors when it comes to language courses? Are Scotland and Wales forced to learn English, or
there used to be something called the Welsh Knot, and the Welsh not. When kind of sort of the English took administrative control of Wales, and schools had been established, they literally forced people to not speak Welsh. And so children who were caught speaking Welsh in school would have to wear this kind of board around their neck, almost sort of the way you'd see, almost like prisoners you'd see kind of with the number on, or pictures of the Holocaust where you'd see kind of Jews wearing something around their neck, Star of David or something, and they'd say they'd literally wear this board saying sort of not to speak Welsh. So they'd be punished. They'd be caned, hit, and then sort of have to wear this kind of piece of humiliation. So it drove it underground, and the Welsh language almost died out.
It's the same with there's a handful of other languages, like Cornish, another one that was very similar kind of situation. Another kind of regional language of old. It's been sort of pushed under, and Scots as well. That's another one that's we've had a hand in destroying. They're all sort of trying to make a bit of a resurgence.
You almost forget that there are actual real languages in these countries, because you never see it from the outside. Sweden forced Finland to, and I think there's still that they were forced to learn Swedish, although they didn't want. So, I mean, everyone in Finland has learned Swedish in primary school, but they refuse to acknowledge it. If you try to, some of them at least, because it's kind of a sore topic.
I think it's a well-known tactic of actually suppressing people. It's taking away their languages, and Norwegians did that as well. We have, together with Sweden and Finland, we have an indigenous people that were mainly residing in the northern parts, and they were not allowed to speak their languages well up until I don't remember exactly, but it's like in the 70s, 80s, they were still being
something like that,
like made stand outside of the society, and they are still struggling to get the equal rights. They're still feeling some, resentment from some people and so on. So it's still a thing today. Like your language is so part of your identity. So if you lose that part, then you basically lose a part of yourself. So it's interesting, but it's still in use all around the world, I see.
Sorry.
There were different tribes is the wrong word, but different kinds of indigenous people. But at least in Sweden, they are this one kind. They are all the same. So we force on them the same. Okay, you're supposed to have reindeers, but no, these are the migrators. But these ones just, are fishermen or something like that. They stay put. Why should they have reindeers as well? That's just absurd. But no one down here in Stockholm cared about that. They just like to enforce laws on people that they didn't really know.
When it comes to languages, it's the order in which things are said in sentences in other languages, which I really struggle with. So, when I tried to learn French in the past, I just can't get my head around the way that the sentence actually works. Is that similar in Swedish, or do your sentences, are they in the same order as an English sentence, or are they a different way around?
There are similarities, but my wife is half Austrian, so she speaks fluently German, and that's completely different. They have different endings, and words and prepositions and everything are just scrambled, which makes it harder.
Yeah. So I think it's closer to English, but
I think you can do an easy Google Translate between Norwegian and English and keep the words in their original places, and it will still make sense. Although
there's a lot of words in English that derive from Danish and Norwegian anyway. From kind of when we had some of your people over here for a bit.
Yeah. Some holiday activities for years back. Yeah.
Just enjoying their hobbies, pillaging and
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I mean, I think the residents or the rulers at the time were just as bad anyway. It was just different hair color for the same activities, I think.
Yeah, more or less.
I read something a while ago. Oh, where was it? Sort of like, it was talking about the kind of sort of the Vikings coming over and kind of it was always putting a correction to the kind of the almost the suggestion of kind of just coming over and raping and pillaging, which is kind of the sort of certainly the storybook
football hooligans.
Yeah, and it was talking about how there was a lot of trade, and with regards to kind of the women, more often than not, there were these hunky, fit Vikings arriving who were much better groomed. They took more care of themselves, and they bathed, and that actually they smelled nice, and so they were actually kind of going, "Oh, you're rather nice, yes," and basically threw themselves at them, and kind of went, he's fat, smelly, and horrible.
I think there were more trade than raping and pillaging, but of course, as you go further back in history, of course, the major events is the ones that gets recorded. So I think you have to take everything with a grain of salt at that time. So it might not be as black and white as it might seem, but
no, enough people go on holiday. Yeah, if enough people, you just think about some modern tourism. Yeah, enough people go off. There's always going to be a few that go off just to kind of do naughty things. Yeah, don't follow. I'm trying to be kind of polite. Yeah, enough people.
That's the British language.
Yeah, there's always going to be some bad eggs if enough people are going.
Yeah, we call it going on holiday. The Danes called it something different.
But it still amazes me that it's still the same mechanisms you can find today. You can have a few leaders in a country keeping the entire people of a country out of fear. They can keep the reign. You can have a handful of people controlling millions of people because, of course, nobody wants to be first in line saying something, because then you're the one who's going to get a cave in. But those mechanisms are really fascinating, because if all the people of a country just collectively say that we won't stand for this, then they could overthrow any government. But the mechanisms of not wanting to be first or exposing yourself or anything, it's really interesting, and it seems to have been that for thousands of years.
Yeah, it's people en masse, isn't it? If you create that kind of system, it's that's how empires form and kingdoms form and principalities form, and we live in a country.
And those country borders change, and lots of little countries become one big country, and there's lots of little countries break up, and then we have the story of the USSR and all the Russian Federation states.
Like the Norwegians, they just go on holiday in neighboring countries, and then after a while the borders move or kind of vanishes.
We always attribute those Brits as being this horrific force of invaders and things like that, but I'm pretty sure we learned a fair bit of it from you guys coming over.
I think that's fair. If we look back at British history, we weren't invading people prior to the Romans coming in and prior to the Norwegians coming in. We just
giving back. That's in the same coin.
Yeah.
And Of course, I haven't read any of this in the history books, so it might be just guesswork on my side, but I don't think contraception was very much a topic back then. So the Norwegians going over to England, there might be some DNA traces there indicating that
There's a
there
fair
are
bit.
some Norwegian heritage involved
Well,
in.
apparently, some of the very early contraception was to use a sheep's bladder, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Rumor has it that was practiced in Wales for a while, and then the English refined it by removing it from the sheep.
You know, it's going. I knew that.
Yeah, I saw that coming.
But what is interesting is that in history, at least on our part, when I had history many years ago, of course, we learned about the Vikings and the trade routes and so on. But what I really can't remember was spoken about was the slave trade, because Norwegians, together with the Danes and Netherlands, and we were big maritime nations. And what I've learned just a few years ago that we were very much involved in the slave trade.
Yeah, I don't think there's many maritime countries that weren't.
No.
Yeah.
But Norway hasn't really been flagged as a major component in that, like the slave triangle. But we were very much involved. But we like to tone that down a bit. We are focusing on going over to England and diversifying our genes over there.
Well, if no one is accusing you, then I mean, you're not really piping up about all the bad things that happened.
No, that's true. But
he probably just didn't take it to the same scale that some of the other countries like the Great Britain took it to. Yeah, we really did. We did things on grand scale, and the whole kind of going off and just invading countries, turning them, telling everyone they had to learn English, and then taking all their antiquities. I mean, it's interesting. The British Museum is called the British Museum, yet most of the stuff is not.
The museum of stuff that we've borrowed.
Well, everybody has to have a hobby, though, don't they?
And I guess you had to go all in because you had to live up calling yourself Great Britain. I mean, you just were plundering about in the inner seas and just jumping over to Ireland and being satisfied with that, it wouldn't be very much great, I think.
Not so in brackets at the start of it, I think, is the bit that we leave out now.
Yeah.
The problem is a lot of people don't know the what Great Britain actually came from. A lot of people think it's Great Britain because Britain was so great and went off and created the entire modern world and colonized. I mean, I think we colonized something like 75% of countries.
We have had a presence in 90% of the countries of the world.
Yeah,
that's 180 countries. We've had either a military presence or some kind of occupation.
And people think the great is because of things like that. Where actually Great Britain is because there are two islands in the British. There are two major islands in what we regard as the British Isles. Because obviously there's I say obviously there are hundreds of islands in what is now the United Kingdom or the British Isles.
It's the British Islands, isn't it? Because
if the two islands, Great Britain was the larger of the two islands, which comprises of England, Scotland, and Wales, and then Little Britain is what comprises now of modern era Ireland and Northern Ireland. So it's Great Britain and Little Britain. That's where the Great Britain came from, because it was the largest of the British Isles. But we won't mention that to the Brexiteers. Let's stay away from politics.
There's a fantastic CGP Grey video from years ago that goes into all the nuance for the definitions of it, and like 98% of Brits won't have a clue about it either, because it goes into, you've got like the United Kingdom, and you've got Great Britain, and you've got the British Isles, and then you've got the British Islands, and then you've got all of the other nuance around it for the additional territories, and there's like 15 different definitions for how far out you zoom. It's ridiculous.
And you can understand how much we care on the outside, and how much we understand.
We get annoyed whether if we click a drop down on a website and we go to G first. No, it's not there. Right? Okay, we've got to scroll all the way down to the U for United Kingdom. If we just had one that we stuck with, that'd be fine. But the fact that it all changes whoever put the site together.
And then after 10 minutes, you realized, they just grouped the United States and the Great Britain as the two first one. They're not even in the alphabetical order. So it's like, Jesus Christ.
It goes United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Albania.
We should probably do an introduction, shouldn't we?
It's about that time, 45 minutes in.
Yeah, 45 minutes in. Yeah, we have a particular way of doing things.
Some of us are more shy than others, I think.
Yeah. For the benefit of the nope, he's back.
Sorry, it's fine.
I had to take care of a rampaging washing machine in the neighboring room.
So we've had cats, we've had dogs, we've had kids, we've had every possible type of intrusion into the podcast. Yeah, not yet had a washing machine wander in.
Yeah, you should have let that one play out, Haavard. That would have been brilliant.
I was just sitting. I could barely hear it in the background, and I know when it finishes its cycle that it's going to start beeping. So should I go and turn it off now? And then, of course, it started the centrifugal program, and then it's trying to shake the house down. So okay, just go and kill it early. Yeah.
I've lost track.
Go on, Andy. You were almost about to do an introduction.
We were about to do an introduction. Yeah, because you guys have come in because you've got 2 episodes out. Yeah. A trial run and a first episode of a new podcast. You make a podcast. Who'd have thought? 3 middle-aged make a podcast.
That's how we communicate, isn't it?
with beards.
Yep.
You've got to have the beard.
You've got to have the beard, yeah.
I'm feeling a slight bit of deja vu to have 3 friends starting a podcast on the podcast, though. I feel like we might have done this recently.
You might have done, yes.
It's like a recurring theme, I would say.
Jimmy, you know what it is? It's a bit like when you get to a certain age and your friends all start getting married or having kids. It's just the same.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's a certain stage of make a life, and your friends start making podcasts.
Yeah,
it's just
with that and buses. It'll be someone else next week.
I had to start a podcast because no one would invite me on there, so I had to have one of my own.
I mean, that's the mentality, isn't it?
I
can do this myself.
It's a matter of timing, though, Glenn. Yeah, you are. We have a list. We have a list of people we are going to invite. I'm not checking back through. I'm pretty sure you're on that list.
Yeah,
sure if you're on that list, you're on the paper list that I've got from the central. I haven't necessarily transcribed yet into the spreadsheet that we have, a shared spreadsheet.
I actually think I'm really happy to come and do this with KJ and Haavard for the first time. Actually, it's good to have backup.
Yeah, you've always been impatient.
I am impatient.
Well, it's always nice to be new together, learning as you go from the same start line, basically. But yeah, I didn't realize until today that, maybe podcasting is the new midlife crisis. I mean, earlier you might have gotten a red sports car and a motorcycle, but now let's make a podcast.
I think it's the new YouTube, to be honest.
I think midlife crisis has definitely been banded around in my household a lot lately.
By your kids?
But by my wife mainly. It's when you find yourself saying silly things like, I'm just off to the workshop to do some filming. Like, that's just not real life, is it? It's nuts. I'm just off to go and record a podcast now, darling.
Yeah, but
Definitely screams of midlife crisis.
I had a conversation with my wife earlier, which basically started with her saying, "Where are you doing your unboxing videos?" Because I've done some unboxing videos. Where are you doing your unboxing videos? And I was like, I'm thinking, why? She's like, I want to bring the. And she was like, I want to bring the succulents in from the garden because the weather's going to start turning soon. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah. And she's like, we've got a table in here, and I've table in the outside and table in the conservatory. And she's like, she wanted to put them on the conservatory table. So it's like, yeah, no, that's fine. It's like the conversations you have when you kind of, yeah.
I think it was a video I did last year. I had a couple of days off work, and then I spend the daytime filming while the kids are in the kindergarten, and then I just forgot the tripod, but I filmed a sequence where I was woken up by an alarm clock, and then my wife came home, and then she walked into the bedroom to change, and then it's a tripod there with a camera on it, and she just looked at me and, why? So yeah, that's the kind of conversations you have after starting YouTube.
Well, I got bored of YouTube, so I decided to sign up to a different site.
Yeah,
so
she starts checking her clothes just to see whether there's going to be.
So, Andy, which one of your channels will the unboxing videos be on?
Tales from Tinkerage.
Right.
That's coming back.
You really have to think through your list of channels, didn't you?
I did. I should have just had some sensible thought at the start and just had one thing, but that would have been too easy. And it's too late now. No, Tales from Tinkerage is coming back.
Yeah.
So I have 3 unboxing videos in the can. Still need to edit them. I don't even know if the footage is any good. Funny story though. There's kind of it's an easy mistake to make when you're assembling certain pieces of equipment. They can go together incorrectly. And in one of the unboxing videos, I assemble a piece of equipment, and I make a point of sort of saying, be really careful at this stage that you don't mess it up. And I put the thing on, I put it together, and then I switch to the particular device on, and it's vibrating a lot. I'm thinking, in my head, God, this is noisy, and it's making a lot of noise. It doesn't seem right, but I'm going to be positive because I'm doing an unboxing video, and it's like, and then kind of a little bit later, I use it, and it's like, this is rubbish.
This is going backwards. What's going on?
So I took it apart again and then put it. No, it wasn't going backwards. And the things were installed the correct way around. And I just kind of thought, right, I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to take this bit off, put it back on again. And I did that, and then it was just like, I don't know what I did different, other than perhaps I wasn't trying to do it and also talk to the camera at the same time. And so I put it back on, and it's like runs so smoothly and so quiet. It's like, oh, I think I got something wrong there. So then I had to I was running out of time, and it was like, right, I better record an errata, and I don't know how it'll come out in the edit. I might be able to.
I was going to say that's a perfect opportunity to jump in with. This is future Andy.
Yes, that's exactly what I started the errata.
Do as I say, not as I did.
Double check this thing. Yeah, I did this deliberately wrong to show you what you might expect if you get it wrong. Yeah.
If you spot the mistake, you can win.
Yeah. So anyway, Tales from Tinkerage is coming back. When is another? That.
And did the workshop ever get tidied up, Andy, as well?
It's still in progress.
Isn't it always?
Certainly improved.
It seems like that.
Yeah. Well, workshops are a continuous thing, aren't they? You're constantly having to sort of do them. But yeah, at the moment, the main workbench is completely covered in stuff and there's a few
Sounds like
bits
a
on the floor
workshop.
that need to come off. Yeah, but it's covered in stuff that stopped me actually doing things. But I've got some gaps, and
Sounds
I
like my
may have
workshop.
also bought another new tool that I need to find space for, which means I need to move some other bits around.
This sounds like an after show thing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, maybe. But in the after show, I think we'll end up talking more about the podcast.
Well, I was going to say, because as we're at that point, is it worth actually getting our guests to explain a little bit about their podcast?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the podcast, and we'll talk more about it in the after show for patrons. Yeah. So, who wants to tell us about the show and what it is, why it is, and who started it?
Whose fault is it? Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting
I'm out.
question.
Yeah. Haavard doesn't actually know who started this yet. He doesn't know the origin story.
Well, that depends on how Machiavellian you want to portray me, I would say, because me and Glenn met at Maker Central, and we had exchanged some messages beforehand. And some evening, when I had listened to a lot of podcasts, I felt an urge that I wanted to talk to another maker. I think it was some kind of Maker Central withdrawal syndrome. So I just messaged Glenn, well, nice to meet you. Maybe we should chat sometime. It's not like we have to start a podcast or anything, but just have a friendly chat. So then we had one WhatsApp call, and that went fine. And then we had another WhatsApp call, and that went fine.
We're
Glenn
now
come
married.
Glenn come back. That thing about the podcast. And I was like, oh, this went faster than I thought. And then we more or less felt like we needed a third person. And like one of the first things when we chatted that Glenn suggested to me was, have you seen this Behind the Mistakes guy? He's doing some really cool stuff.
I didn't say cool.
But I'm
I said that Behind the Mistakes guy's doing some proper crazy shit.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, same difference.
I think that's midlife crisis for cool.
So I mean that is perhaps the origin story, but why and what we do, that's a good question.
Do you know yet? I mean, you're still at early stages, and I would encourage people to go and have a listen. 2 episodes out, so there's a good couple of hours worth. Less if you run it at 1.8 times speed.
That sounds a bit.
Oh
much.
yeah.
1.2 is fine for me.
You are not allowed to speed our episodes up. I've listened to your longest episode ever at normal speed, so you guys can suffer us at normal speed. Definitely.
But yeah, we are still trying to figure out what we actually want with this.
I think we're just we normally start out with a subject and just see where it takes us. Basically, we're happy to ramble on after that. I mean, last week's show, we were talking about ginger people and carpeted toilets at the end, so we're just quite happy for the route to go wherever it goes. To be fair,
I mean, brothers.
I guess it.
bring it in.
I guess it's like this podcast, which tonight turned into the language and history podcast.
Yeah, we waffle's the name, waffle's the nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
But
much
I
so.
think it's a good thing that we don't have a long history prior to starting a podcast, because we don't know each other. So we are curious people, and that in itself will fuel the conversation and also let information drip onto the listeners that are actually listening in. Because if we knew each other, there would because if we knew each other well, then of course we would take very much for granted, which the listeners really can't read between the lines.
Mm.
So that's the similar sort of vibe I got from the start of Three Northern Makers. Now, they're 106 episodes in, so they've become much more established now in terms of. I feel like I know them, really well because of the ups and downs and the way they've sort of talked, and I think there's that sort of development of a relationship that almost as the listener you're privy to, and you get to kind of hear that kind of sort of development. I get it's that odd thing with sort of almost with sort of social media, isn't it, where you and just media in general, where you kind of you get to know people, but it's like when people turn up to Make It Central and Jimmy DeResta's there, and everyone knows Jimmy DeResta's name, but he knows about 30 people. It's just that complete
the parasocial relationship.
It's that sort of paradox of millions of people follow somebody like Jimmy DeResta, and
I know you, but you don't know me.
And getting the insight into people's lives and the like.
But I think no matter what format you are in, you at some point reach that threshold because someone start listening to a podcast for the topics, and then you stay because of the people. Because if the people are uninteresting or the chemistry is not there, it doesn't really matter if the topic is interesting. So you start by following a topic, and then you get invested into the people. And if they have a growth and the relationship changes over time, then you keep people in. If you have podcasts that are talking about very narrow niches and all the episodes sounds the same, then at some point you just grow tired, and then you just start listening to something else. So I think maybe not having a very strict set list and a setup for a podcast and two narrow niches, that might be the way to go.
I think as well, if it's an unknown quantity, it's got that kind of, you said, that discovery of the conversation for yourselves, but also for the listeners. If it's an unpredictable thing, the kind of predictable unpredictability is quite a draw for some people.
Yeah,
and relatability.
At least 10 to 15 people have been drawn in so far.
Fantastic.
It's relatability as well, isn't it? Which I think is quite important. I think maybe that might be something to talk about actually in the after show. Which probably the best thing to do. Where can people find you as individuals, and also where can you find us the podcast?
The easiest place to find us all is on our Instagram, which is No.1 Crude Mistakes. We've got all our individual links on there, so you can find us there. Easy enough.
Cool.
I think you said it.
Yeah.
I think you said it nice, Glenn, in the last episode when we started listing up all the places you can find us. The easiest is just to go on Google and put in No.1 Crude Mistakes, because we have a web page and we have all our individual accounts all linked to it. So at some point you can't really avoid stumbling over to us individually as well.
Yeah, we were quite prepared before we put out any content, weren't we?
We had very little planning and meetings before we started recording. I think the first meeting we had, we realized we should have started recording already, because there are so much in the preparation phase that would have been comedy gold, or maybe comedy bronze we landed on. But and then we started, we should just say that 80% is good enough, and then we'll launch, because we can plan this to death, or we can just start walking and make it up as we go. And that's also our name. It's a combination of our own YouTube accounts, and it was just a working title, which we had to have a working title to just get some stuff up and running. And then we just realized, well, it's starting to stick, so why don't we just just use it instead of spending weeks trying to find a catchy name that's available as a web page and as an Instagram and YouTube handle and doesn't mean something obscene in some setting or something. So we just went for it.
We actually had that name, Haavard, before you actually said yes to joining us.
So predictable.
You were just expecting mistakes.
Yeah.
You feel set up. Yeah.
So what you did is you scrolled through the Make a Rolodesk for someone with mistakes in their name and went, yeah,
Absolutely,
he'll do.
yeah.
But that's really the way my name on my YouTube account started, because the first video, if you look at the intro, it says made by mistake. And then I thought, okay, but I have my Instagram account where I will post behind the scenes and everyday parts of the build and so on. And I call that, well, behind the mistakes. And then after a couple of days, I realized made by mistake is a sentence which is very much used. So when people are Googling that, they get a lot of other hits. And then I started feeling that behind the mistakes, that has a certain ring to it. So I think it was after the second video or something, I just swapped over when I realized that the name was available.
A good way to do it.
I watched your first video for the just the other night, and it was, for a first attempt at a YouTube video, that was bloody fantastic. That was so funny. Just
I smell. Not smell. That's the wrong word. There's an element of stalking here. Kind of, getting the name in place before approaching. I think we should talk more about this in the after show.
Will you do the introductions at that point?
Maybe.
We've already briefly discussed grooming in terms of grooming the Vikings, so maybe it's a different type going on. Grooming the podcast.
That could be a topic in itself, couldn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I'll think
In
about
that
that.
case, click the button then.
Yeah, well, we'll see you next week, folks. And if you want to listen to the rest of the conversation, you'll have to sign up for the Patreon. Megan's Waffle. Patreon/Megan's Waffle, whatever it is.
Something
All
like that.
LinkedIn. It's
Or
linked
become a guest.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Then
become a
listen
guest.
to your show.
Yeah,
or become a guest.
Yeah, that can help too. Yeah.
All you have to do is start a podcast and you're in.
You know
It's
you
easier
want
than
to.
you think.
Right.